So welcome to the virtual Women's Bike Fit Clinic. I'm Casey McClurg. I'm the founder of Endurance Sports Center here in Colorado Springs, Colorado, USA. And I have James Roberts. He owns the Bollington Bike Fit Company, and he also has a coaching business, James Robert Coaching, there in Manchester, UK. So kind of interesting how we met. We're both endurance coaches, obviously. So we were at a Training Peaks virtual summit. What do you think, James? It was probably 3 weeks ago now?
Yeah, approaching 3 weeks ago. We were both online in the same webinar, listening to the same information.
Yeah, and you know how it goes. We're going through listening to these webinars, and we both ended up in a virtual bike fit seminar. And this guy who was doing it, nice guy, lots of things that we could glean information off of, but oh my God, he did not understand the female body, and it was driving me insane. So I asked a question over in the chat. James popped on right away, like, let's connect offline right now. We'll definitely have this conversation because it's so important to make sure that we get proper bike fits for as ladies, because our anatomy is just a little bit different than the guys, in case you haven't noticed. So that's where James and I started to connect, and it turned into why don't we make this available to more than just he and I? And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to James. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we will get started.
Fabulous. Thanks very much, Casey. So, right, let's share screen. Make sure I choose the right one. Desktop 2. And we're a go. So hopefully everybody can see that on the screen now. Casey, you just give me a thumbs up to confirm. Brilliant, we're a go. Excellent. So, women's specific bike fitting. As Casey said, I'm James, British Cycling Level 3 coach, and a Bike Fit, which is an American company, Bike Fit trademark, Level 2 pro bike fitter. And yes, I'm a bloke. I'm here to talk about women's specific bike fitting, but something that is quite close to my heart, as both my family are involved as well. So here's my background, give you a little run through. As Casey said, I own Bollington Bike Fit here in Bollington, near Macclesfield, which is just a small town outside of Manchester in the UK. I was the lead bike fitter for the Great Britain cycling team on the apprentice program. So that's the 15 and 16-year-olds who are looking to make it into the British cycling pathway and head through into the Olympic program. I've been coaching for about 7 or 8 years now, and I'm qualified to the highest level in the UK in both road racing, time trialing, and track racing. I also manage a cycle race team, JSC Shutt Ridley, and I've noticed one of my riders on the call this evening, Annabelle. So I apologise, Annabelle, as we get further into this presentation. Some of the conversations that we're going to have are not what you and I would normally have openly. I'm also an assistant coach to the GB cycling team, apprentice squad, and the under 23 squad. So this is under 23 that feeds into the Olympic program, where the future stars are nurtured to deliver the Olympic gold medals. Biggest achievement is partner to Claire, who's former GB rider and current Cat 2 racer in the UK, and is a lifelong cyclist. So she very much knows all about bike fitting and the pitfalls that can come from an ill-fitting bike. And heading towards the future, I'm stepdad to Anna, a future sprint star, hopefully. She's off to the velodrome tonight to practice her standing starts, ready for the weekend. Okay, so moving into the actual bones of what we're here for. We're talking about taking control of your ride. So this is the bike fit for you, and understanding what it's about from a female perspective, as opposed to just some chap in a shop saying, yeah, that saddle's fine, yeah, those bars are fine, etc. There are so many considerations to take into account. Okay, we're going to look at it from the ground up, from the shoe size. I'm going to look at the Q factor and how that affects things into the pelvis. Going to cover skin, saddles, and sores. And Casey's going to give you all a warning when we get to that part, just to, if you want to look away, you could look away at that moment. Nothing too graphic, but certainly worth the conversation. Flexibility and shoulders, both of them come into it. Lots of information there with regards to why your handlebar should be a certain width, etc., and the flexibility of a female versus the standard flexibility of a male. And importantly, heading towards the end, the hands and the safety of the bike. So very much working from the shoe, the pedal foot interface, all the way through the body, ending up at holding the handlebars and making sure you can ride the bike safely. And then we're going to have a very brief look at some virtual bike fits and some new concepts. You know, 2020 has been a bit of a weird year for us all, and we're having to move into different formats of how we do things. So virtual bike fitting is becoming more and more common. And if we've got time at the end, I will grab Annabelle in, because I've done a virtual bike fit with Annabelle from my team. See if she can give us some feedback on it. Sorry, Annabelle, to just throw that one out here. So bike fit goals. Now I'm going to open this up to the chat group. So if you can all get fingers poised, ready to jump in. I'd like you to tell me, why do you need a bike fit? What is a bike fit to you? So let's have a couple of minutes just putting some things into the chat group. Casey, I can't actually see the Q&A when I've got the presenter notes up on one screen. So if you could just fire some of those over to me, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, we have numb toes and ulnar nerve numbness, especially with climbing, saddle sores, injury prevention, sore knees, increased performance, more injury prevention.
Okay.
Come on, guys, type.
Certainly hitting the notes there. Definitely the injury prevention. Definitely that numbness or that comfort. That's coming through there. Okay. So I'll run through. Any more come in?
She wants to improve her ability to ride comfortably.
Okay. So I think I'm going to cover all of those as we go through. It's to enhance your overall comfort. Okay. So your comfort, whether you're riding full tilt, full gas, or whether or not you're just out for a leisurely club run or even a cafe ride, we want to do it comfortably. Definitely reducing the risk of injuries. Full stop. If you get injured, you're not on the bike, you're not enjoying yourself. To rectify and diagnose saddle discomfort. Again, now all of these come back to it's about enjoying your ride. Every single one feeds into the next. And to increase your performance. Now your performance might not be to win Kona. Your performance might be to ride to the shops locally with comfort, but in an efficient manner so that you're not out of breath, etc., and not unduly discomforted when you get there. Okay, performance is specific to the individual, and not everything is about increasing your FTP or increasing that kind of power. So I think a lot of those answers that came in hit the goal on the head there. So why is this doing this twice? Here we go. Just going to take over with the mouse. 2 seconds, everybody. There we go. So from the ground up. Starting with the feet, we have different shaped feet and most importantly, different height feet. So on a female foot, the lateral arch is much higher than on a male foot. And that's then encompassed with a big toe that tends to be more discreet. By more discreet, that means it tilts over to one side a little bit more. making the outside of the foot that little bit shorter. Overall, normally the shoe size is slightly smaller than the male equivalent. However, I do have a counter to that. Sat next to me is Claire with a US 11, UK 10, and obviously that then has its own considerations, which we'll come to in a moment. But looking at that arch that's much higher, we need to then be able to support it. And the average cycling shoe doesn't necessarily have the right level of support in it. If you ever look at your cycling insole that's inside the shoe, it's going to be a flat, occasionally pre-shaped piece of foam or card at best, which isn't going to do much when you start putting pressure down on the foot. So looking at, and I'll caveat here, I do work with Superfeet very closely. Having a footbed in there that supports the arch from front to rear, rear to front, and a narrow stabilized heel cup is going to give you a lot more comfort in your cycling. It's certainly going to give you more performance as the foot doesn't flatten through the pedal stroke. Okay, so shoes and feet. So looking at that picture here, and obviously I've grabbed pictures that I've got access to, so that's my stepdaughter Anna. But looking at her pedal foot interface on the bike, we're looking at the heel to ball position. And again, different to the male foot is the position of the ball of your foot, which is slightly further back on the female, even if it's the same size. So by having the pedal axle aligned correctly over the ball of the foot, that's across, in technical terms, from the first metatarsal head to the fifth metatarsal head, you're going to be able to get a nice even pressure. So that might be different, and it's certainly going to be in a different position to where it would be on a man's shoe. And also then looking at the shoes themselves, they need to be of the correct width for yourself, and not just taking a standard male last. Looking at brand, maybe Lake is one that I know do a variation in widths and also lengths to accommodate the right size foot. So as you can see here from just behind the first metatarsal head, so that's the knobbly bit, as Claire likes to remind me. Not everybody works in metatarsals. From the knobbly bit on the inside of your foot to the knobbly bit on the outside of your foot, and to have that weight evenly dissipated across that area. If you don't support the foot, then that's going to collapse and it's going to spread out in a splayed motion. So always look to have the arch supported before we head in to the axle. Okay. So Q factor, technical word for your pelvis and the alignment that it heads towards your knees. So again, big consideration between the female to the male anatomy is the angle that we come in at. So as we can see here on the image on the screen, the female angle is at 16 degrees compared to the male Q factor at 12 degrees. And that's because the female pelvis is wider to accommodate all of the organs that are in there, but also the angle that then comes in means that your hips are at a slightly wider position to start with when you're sat on the saddle. What we're trying to do is to ensure that the pedal action is in a straight line. So as the femur goes up and down to drive the pedal, that we're not throwing the knee out at the top of the pedal stroke. And to do that, we need to ensure that the alignment, and sorry everyone, I couldn't find a male leg with a laser line on it, female leg with a laser line, but the line through the femur into the knee joint, which is just below the patella, down through the second toe on the shoe, should retain a straight line as we're pedaling. Now, to overcome that, we can use certain things such as pedal wedges, angling of the foot, etc. But it goes back to where we have that cleat set up in the start, whether it's too far forward or too far back, etc. Now, I'm going to just throw a quick consideration in here. Triathlon, if you are doing iron distances, you may want to have your cleat set slightly further back than you would normally to allow your calf muscles to not be overused during the bike section. So that's just a consideration to take into account when you're setting up for iron distance. Okay, so the Q factor, how can we help on that? Back in the day, many, many years ago, bikes were made in a shop and they were made of steel and they were welded together. That meant you could then get the bike Q factor, so the width of the bottom bracket, to suit the width of your pelvis. And it would be measured up, if you were lucky enough to have one custom made, it'd be measured up and it'd be set to your width. Unfortunately, today, we all buy pretty much the same carbon frame from the same factories in the Far East. They come in and it's a set distance between the bottom brackets. So we can adjust that by two methods. We can either use pedal spacers, which come in 1.5 mil distances. We can use up to 2 of those at any particular time. Above that, and you're starting to risk not having enough thread inside the crank. And then we can also head towards the 20 mil spacer. Now the 20 mil spacer gives us a great amount of options for maneuvering the foot and the alignment so that we're pedaling in a straight line. It's not unique to women. That Q factor, some men do have a wider hip factor. I think we all know Peter Sagan, or certainly know the name, and he rides those 20 mil pedal spacers on his bike. So it's more common on the female fit, and Claire uses them on her track bike, etc. But getting that position correct for you is very important, and to understand your own Q factor. So the pelvic tilt, this is where we're starting to get to the nitty-gritty of why things could potentially hurt more in the saddle, etc., from the female fit. Women walk with a more anterior pelvic tilt and have a greater excursion in pelvic obliquity than the males. So that means that the pelvis is rotated more in that direction. So it's an anterior tilt. Now, if you can see there, that naturally means that the body is leaning forwards and heading towards the front of the saddle naturally. So when we sit down on the saddle, we've got more pressure heading towards the front. That's going to cause 2 things. You're going to restrict the blood flow and blood return from the lower legs, thus making recovery slightly harder. But also, as we can see here, we have the pubic bone at the front. That's going to be rotated and putting more pressure on the saddle, or getting more pressure from the saddle, creating more friction, etc. So working with some exercises, pelvic floor exercises, etc., are going to help rotate that pelvis back. I talked the other day about the English finishing school kind of posture of how to walk. That rotates the pelvis back and holds it in a more neutral position. So what's going to happen if we lean forwards like that? Now I just need to move my pictures on the screen of everyone so I can actually get to my notes on this one. So male skin is on average 20% thicker than women's skin. Sorry, Claire's pointing at my screen here. Another picture. Here, that's the picture I'm talking about. And as a result, it contains more collagen and it's got a tighter and firmer appearance. So we're starting off with a different skin thickness between the sexes. Men also then have more subcutaneous glands. In other words, they produce more oil, so it's a more greasy feel. Now, one of the issues here is if we're starting off with a thinner skin and less oil in the skin, we're going to be causing more friction. Okay. With more friction, we're going to then potentially look at more saddle sores, pressure sores, etc. So over the past few years, and anybody in the UK will certainly have heard of this, but discussions and scientific research was put into how to reduce the skin friction. And it was done by the Great Britain cycling team just before the Rio Olympics. And as you can see from that top picture there, do's and don'ts. The pubic hair helps with the transportation and evaporation of sweat away from the skin. So the women on the team were very strongly advised, including posters and seminars, to stop shaving. Okay, removing the hair also then reduces some of the oil that you do have. So you're shaving the top surface of the skin off, you're removing the moisture transportation method, and it increases the risk of the ingrowing hairs. When you've got all that going on, you're automatically heading towards more potential and more risk of friction sores. A couple of ways to treat that. Obviously, stop shaving and stop using soap. Okay, bizarre, but head towards a non-soap based wash, something along the lines of Dermol 500 or an antibacterial shower gel as a soap substitute. So, do you want to throw that caution warning out?
So I know a lot of women are very apprehensive about not wanting to let their pubic hair grow wild and free. Can you give them any advice as to whether or not there's an issue if they use a trimmer versus shaving completely?
Yeah, I think really, I can certainly appreciate it from, not letting it go wild and free. That's a really good phrase. I'm going to keep that one. Thank you. But if you consider anything of an external visible area to be kept shaved and under control, but inside the certainly the swimsuit line or the knicker line, to be reduced down to still enough length to transport away, as opposed to going, let's put it out there, instead of a full bush, let's just have a trimmed environment. It's really the shaving point that, as you draw the blade across the skin, that's what's going to damage the skin. So using a trimmer, to trim it down, I would still leave some length on the hair to ensure that you've got a vehicle to transport the moisture away, as opposed to having it too short where it's just going to hold, and certainly the salt in the sweat is going to cause extra friction. Right, we're ready for the next slide.
Not sure.
Okay, so we've renamed this slide Saddle Sores and More, and got a couple of pictures here, and I want to talk about a young lady called Hannah Dines. She's a Great Britain cycling team power rider. Now, there's a condition that is becoming more and more common with cyclists, female cyclists, and certainly those who are doing endurance and distance training. Hannah announced to the world that she was having distinct problems with her vulva and swelling and discomfort at the same time. And that was because she was training for very long periods of time in the saddle. As a power rider, she was also unable to get up out the saddle and move around as some others are. And it's the research that has been published. We'll share all this information with you afterwards. But too many coaches were just talking about local anesthetic cream, trying to numb the pain, etc. But over a period of time, the issues of the pressure and the consistent pressure has built up to enlarged labia, predominantly on one side more than another. And it is rider dependent which side you're more dominant on, but it's something that, as I said the other day, if I can help one lady on this webinar not have to undergo surgery for the disfigurement, then I feel as though my job's done. And what we're talking about is this young lady here, Hannah, who ended up having to have that corrected. Okay, so that is becoming more and more common with female riders. Basically, talk to your GP and talk to your bike fitter. If your bike fitter doesn't understand the issue, show them the research that will be sent out to you after this webinar. Okay. So the other one, and this is an image of a saddle saw, where, as you can see, the area has been shaved all the way down, so there's no hair in that area, and it creates a pus that builds up as a cyst underneath the skin that then gets infected. Some of them can be blood blisters, but in the main, it's like a zit, but it's just going to get more and more sore. One thing I'm going to say, and we talked about this the other day, in the UK, we have a product called Sudocrem. Sudocrem is definitely not the thing to put on it. Okay, so that's a nappy rash cream, barrier cream that we have in the UK. You've got something similar in the US. What it does is it cooks the wound, and it just gets hotter and becomes more infected. You need to use things like Epiderm, etc., and that Dermal 500 type wash to keep the area clean so it can recover. Okay, so because we have that rotated pelvis, and because we can end up with those sores and the disfigurement, we need to look at the sit bones and how we're going to manage sitting on the saddle. So one size certainly doesn't fit all, and what we need to look at is how we're going to create relief on the saddle so that we're not putting pressure on that pubic bone at the front. And when we are in an extreme position, such as time trialing or triathlon on a TT bike, that we're able to get the channel relief and the comfort moving around on the saddle. So this particular saddle that I brought up here, this is called the Physio saddle. It's quite a bizarre looking saddle because it has a predetermined sit bone area, but it runs a channel relief all the way through the middle and is sculpted out at front. What it does do is when your pelvis is in that anterior rotated position, it holds the position quite comfortably so that the relief is already there by the sit bone support that's sculpted at the rear of the saddle. It also means that you're not able to sit too far forward on that particular saddle. Okay, the next one, it's a product from the US and it's by Bike Fit. I haven't actually sat on one of these, but the concept is absolutely brilliant. The concept is it's adjustable to you. So the front of the saddle and the rear of the saddle can adjust both in and out as far as the width is concerned. The nose of the saddle has got three, if I remember right, three different variations or variants from narrow, medium and wide fit. And then you can adjust it in and out accordingly to your shape. I think we've all seen the ISM range, and I bring this up because they are fantastic for providing comfort and relief and certainly allowing the blood flow between the anus and the front through the perineum. But I would just counter it by saying they're not brilliant for road riding. They're great for time trials, great for track, but on the road, they tend to lock your pelvis out, so you can't move around, so you can't wiggle around on the saddle quite so easily when you're riding. And I got that information from another Macclesfield Wheelers rider, so to support that. And then finally, price. Okay, so I think we all know the brand Specialized and just quite how cheap it can be or not. But this particular saddle is something that I really love from a shape point of view. It supports the sit bones across various different sized riders very well. It's got a wonderful sculpted nose to it, but also the channel in the middle, and the sculpting goes all the way through to the very tip. However, at over £100, 130 odd pounds for that saddle in the UK. That one is £25, okay? And it's almost identical. I have that on my bike, as does Claire, as does Anna, and it is probably the most comfortable saddle that we've all used for the exactly the same reasons. You know, just putting it out there, you don't need to spend an absolute fortune to get the right saddle. You just need to look at the shape and the positioning. So, ladies, you're flexible, a lot more flexible than us blokes, but that can be negative at the same time as being a benefit. The issue that we have with having extra flexibility is if we're in that rotated position, without having a good strong core and certainly you know, the lower obliques in your back, there is a tendency to over rotate. And when we're sat, if we have an anterior rotated pelvis to start with, and then we go down onto the drops, we can have a tendency to over rotate. And what that's going to do is going to put even more pressure on the front of that pubic bone, create more sores. So a good off-bike program, working on your core strength to work with your natural flexibility. Flexibility is great as long as you're not allowing it to become too flexible. You can then head into potential hypermobility. So always work with your trainer to get a good strength conditioning program. It also has a couple of other differences from a hormonal point of view. Obviously, chaps have got more testosterone than women, and on the estrogen side, the estrogen tends during the growth years to lead to the wider hips, and that's what gives you your extra mobility in your hip socket to start with. So, good strength conditioning program to keep you in control. Right, Casey, can I just get a quick poll as to how many people are riding the bars that came with their bike? If it's a road bike predominantly at the moment, I'll come to mountain bikes in a moment.
Yeah, if you have a road bike, put a 1 in if you're riding. Mountain bike, put a 2 in, and then put a 3 in if you put custom bars on. Lots of 1s, 2, 1, 3, 1, lots of 2s, 3. So it looks like we have a pretty even split between road and mountain bikers, and most people are riding with the stock bars.
Okay, fabulous. So, what is the problem with stock bars? The shoulder width between male and female, it's got wider over the past number of years, but in the US, the average shoulder width for men is 16 inches and for women is 14 inches, so 41 centimeters and 36 centimeters. Now, if you look at 36 centimeters on a road bike, most bikes, even the women specific, come at best with a 390, more likely a 400 or a 420. So therefore, your arms are going to be slightly wider than your shoulders. Now, what that tends to do is it will, as you can see here, one set of bars. So the lady in the front from Australia has got slightly wider than shoulder bars, and the lady behind has got, in my opinion, shoulder width bars comparable to her shoulders. When you have your arms open and you bring your hands further out, that then raises your shoulder blades at the back. Two things are going to happen then. You're going to get slight pressure in your shoulders from a neck pain perspective, and it's also going to restrict your breathing. Now, taking this into account, bar width should be looked at a lot more closely. And what I normally do with a bike fit is ask the rider to put the hands straight out in front, lower them down onto the bars, and that's the measurement from the middle of the middle finger. From either side, that should be the width of the bar, give or take whatever sizes you can find. Give you a little bit of a guide. the Great Britain cycling team podium squad, so the World Cup races, they're riding track bars that are 28 centimeters now. So that's considerably narrower than most people's shoulders. Mountain bikes. Now, the modern thought process on mountain bikes has been to go wider from a stability point of view. The only thing I would caveat there is just check how much of a raise you've got from your stem and your bar shape so that you're not putting your shoulders backwards. Okay, you want your shoulders to be relaxed forward so your shoulder blades aren't being pushed backwards by the bars. If that's the case, then you're probably too close to the bars and you might need a slightly longer stem, or your saddle may not have been in the right position to start with. So have a think about that. Mountain bikes, yes, I understand why you go wider from the control and stability point of view, but still you don't want to be pushing your shoulders backwards.
And James, on that real quick, when we have the wide bars on the mountain bikes, now that's starting to cant our wrists outwards as well. So is that a reason they could also be experiencing wrist pain and that shortness of breath?
Did you say shortness of breath there?
Yes.
Yeah, quite very much so. Certainly on the wrist pain. So the human body likes things to be lined up nice and straight. Whenever we put an angle into it, that's when we are reducing blood flow, etc. And more importantly, the return from the pain receptors. If you hold your hand out straight in front of you and then close your fist, the angle through your fist, through the palm of your hand, is 135 degrees to the body. Now, if anybody looks at a disabled grab rail, that will be angled at 135 degrees to a toilet. And the reason for that is the strongest position for you to pull up and stand up. So whenever you move your hands out of that 135 degrees to the wrist, that's when you will start putting pressure on your carpal tunnel and getting pins and needles from the blood flow that's being restricted into the hand. The shortness of breath is because you're pushing backwards and you're riding with a more tense shoulder and tense neck, and you're not allowing the lungs to operate freely. Right, and talking of hands, can we all reach our shifters? That is the million-dollar question for your own safety and also riding the bike. So looking at the hand reach, now there's a lot of brands out there that have started to look at reach and control. But basically, if you can't get, as in that first picture, those first two fingers around your brake lever, be it a mountain bike lever or a road STI shifter type, then maybe either the shifter is the wrong type for yourself, or it's not been adjusted accordingly. Now, Shimano and SRAM have started moving into adjustable levers. You can adjust the rake and the position on them a little bit better. But if you're still struggling, or you've got a particularly small handset, you might want to look at something along the lines of the micro shift, which is that picture with the R8 on there. They do models from the R8, obviously, which is an 8-speed up to an 11-speed. And whilst they were designed for children, they work perfectly well in adults, and it's just for the hand size. That way, it then helps you be able to reach, keep control, and maintain stability when you're descending. So, virtual help. We can't all get to the local bike shop at the moment. We can't all get to a bike fitter due to different restrictions, due to COVID, etc. And also, everything's going online these days. So why doesn't bike fitting? We need to give a little caveat to this bit that we're going into now, because unless you're confident at taking parts of a bike apart and putting them back together, the virtual bike fit may not be the best route for you. But what we do, all we need is a static turbo, whether it's a dumb turbo like the one in the picture or a smart turbo. You just need to be able to mount your bike nice and secure, so we're not going to move around too much. I then need a photograph. Photograph from the side now. This young lady, she's stuck on the Isle of Man. If anyone's not heard of the Isle of Man, it's a tiny little dot between the UK and Ireland, but they've got zero COVID. So they're not allowed to travel on or off the island at the moment without great restriction. But she needed a bike fit, so sent me over the image, and we were able to work through the positioning. Apologies, it was a photograph of my knees as well while I was working on it. And what we're looking at through the app that I use, we can then measure the angles of the position. So be it the leg position, to the knee, working on the pelvic rotation into the bars and the grips as well. So we can do it with time trial position, and again, a couple of considerations, whether that's for long distance or standard distances. Angles that we're looking at, as you can see there, so you've got the legs, the hips, and then the shoulder positions. Now those angles that we're looking at, we work on between 135 and 150 for the knee angle. We work on 100 degrees for the hip flexation and 90 degrees for the shoulder flexation. All of those are really easily taken from the image that you send over, as long as it's at 45. Side on view, perfect view. And then that's what we're heading towards. Again, this was a client that I worked with. This is in my bike fit studio. But the tools you need, as you can see quite comfortably there, is the Allen keys and preferably a torque wrench. All of this is fairly easy to do. The process takes just about as long as a normal fit. But what we can't do is the cleat setup quite so easily. We can give you a guide and a steer, but the cleat setup is something that is quite hands-on from a fitting perspective. So, takeaways: make your ride a happy one. And all the way through, this is the whole reason we're here today, is to make sure that we're smiling. I can see a couple of smiling faces there on the screen, that we're smiling while we're riding. That's a number of girls from my race team, from the one and only race we managed to get to this year before we got locked down. Think about your feet, think about your saddle, think about your skin, shoulders and hands. They're the points to take away, and really understand what's happening on each of those areas and how that differs. And I hope I've covered a lot of differences between the male anatomy and female anatomy over the webinar this evening, to help you understand why a standard bike fit isn't always the best case. There we go. Over to yourselves. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks so much, James. We got a couple questions come in the chat. Can we go over your thoughts on selecting specific liners or chamois?
Yes, definitely. So I'm just gonna change screens. Bear with me 2 seconds, just so I can get this up a bit more. So considerations on liners or chamois: spend as much money as you're comfortable spending. Okay, if you look at brands such as Assos or Giordano, they have certainly put the research into the chamois and consider the female anatomy a lot more than other brands. You need to look at the width of the chamois in comparison to your own body. You don't want to have any scrunching or rooking up of the material in between your thigh and your labia, because that's just going to create more friction. And once you've got the right shape, then make sure that they've got the right amount of padding on the pubic bone. Too many brands just make a slightly shorter chamois and don't add any more padding to that frontal area. It's crucial to have the padding in the right places. I'd also say look at getting the right type of chamois cream. Now, I'm not going to give any must have this brand or must have that brand from chamois creams, but I would say potentially look towards a prosthetics barrier cream as opposed to a chamois cream that's just designed for cycling. And the main reason for that is prosthetics generally have obviously the cup, and then they normally have a sock over the prosthetic as they then attach it to the skin. So if you've got a cream that's designed for that environment, when you're using it in a cycling capacity, you're looking at the chamois rubbing against the skin. So you've got a product that's designed for that kind of operation in the first place.
Awesome. We have a couple questions coming in the chat right now. What is the biggest indicator that your fit is off versus you're just not as fit as you once were? So how do you know that it's a strength and conditioning issue or if it's a bike fit issue?
It's generally a dull pain somewhere that you've not noticed before. Maybe a little bit of an ache in the shoulders, maybe an ache in the wrists, maybe some pins and needles occurring in the feet. One thing to add, just going back down to the feet, if you're using a cycling shoe that's got a ratchet clasp that goes over the top and you crank it down, don't crank it down too far. You've got a lovely vein on top of the foot there that's supplying blood flow to your feet. If you push down on that blood supply too much, you're going to get pins and needles very, very quickly. I learned that the hard way in ski boot fitting many years ago. Everybody used to clamp down that second buckle. Yeah, leave that one nice and gentle, tight as you need it. Shoes such as Giro, where they've got the laces, you can adjust the laces accordingly around the foot then, so you've got the right amount of pressure where you need it.
Yeah, the BOA systems are really great with that.
Yeah, so certainly dual BOA helps because then you can get the forefoot position really nice and close, and then you can get just a nice control on the upper one.
Another question in the chat. Can you please explain again how to fix numbness in the hands, especially the ulnar nerve related, as it relates to mountain bike bars? Is it worth sacrificing the control of wider bars for proper fit with the narrow bars?
I'm gonna go old school, really old school, and potentially look at getting bar end supports. So back in the day, and I've still got my 1992 Peugeot Team Canyon Pro with original kit on, just going to put that out there. But I've got bar ends on it. So my hands, when I'm riding out and I'm, I'm climbing, etc., I've got the control that's slightly wider, but I've got that bar end position that holds my hands at 135 degree. I do suffer when I'm riding a normal mountain bike with my hand. I've got arthritis. So if I'm not exactly in that 135 position, then I'm, any pressure in a rotated motion, either way, it's going to cause me pain. And the same goes with TT bars. So if you're in a time trial position, I'm going to try and demonstrate. Having your hands like that, that's the 135 position. If you've got the bar going through, that's fine. If you've got the bars where your wrists have to do that, you're going to get some pain during the time that you're in the race position, and that's then going to make you want to come off the TT position to the outer bars, get comfortable again, and then go back down. In a time trial or triathlon, every time you come out of that aero position, you're losing time. So you need to get the bar set for you comfortably without any pressure.
Another question. Basically, I don't see women doing the bike adjustments as frequently as men. Is it just something women are putting up with, in your opinion?
Yes, it is the easy answer. I think most of the ladies that I've worked with would prefer to get it done correctly, as opposed to maybe tinkering. Now, I certainly know, having worked with the GB riders previously, a lot of people have got the experience, or certainly the expertise to do it, but maybe not the self-confidence to do it. And I would say maybe look in your local area if there's any bike maintenance seminars, just to get that confidence at, you know, taking something apart. But the information is out there on the internet. You know, if you want to do an Allen bolt and you need to torque it back up again, the information is out there on the internet on numerous websites. I'm going to put a bike geometry website link up so that everyone can find out stuff about their own bikes quite easily on the information afterwards. But definitely the internet has got lots of information for you.
Yeah, and with a lot of the women that some of the concerns that women tend to have is we don't want to complain because we don't want to basically be the ones who are slowing down the process. Feel like maybe we're just not as proficient on the bike, so we don't ask questions. That's not accurate. If the bike is uncomfortable for you in any way, that means something isn't right. Whether that's a bike fit issue, whether that's a technique skill issue, it should be comfortable, it should be fun, and you aren't putting anybody out there.
Yeah, I mean, just on that line, I've had. I started in a former cycling club that I was in. I started their women's only bike rides. Yeah, me, a bloke again, starting the women's only everything. But one of the big conversations that I have is that the ladies don't want to hold things up. They don't want to ask the questions, etc. I've heard that, and a really big one is riding with their partner. The partner says, "You're in the wrong gear. You're not doing that right. You're not doing that right," and that then puts them off, you know, getting involved, etc. So the one thing I've always said is, if it feels right for you, it's right. If it doesn't feel right, ask the question.
Thanks for a lot of times we get told that rules are going to another question coming in: how can I figure out the proper reach on my mountain bike?
Okay, so the proper reach on the mountain bike is, so it's back to the angles again. So the 100-degree angle from the hip flexor and the 90-degree angle on the shoulders. Once you've got that, so that's set by, if you're on a dropper post, it's the fully extended. If you're on a normal post, getting your saddle height correct and your saddle fore and aft correct, that's the starting point. Once you've got that, that then sets your pelvic rotation or your hip rotation to then be leaning on the bars. Now, you don't want to be rotated too far forward because you're then going to put extra pressure. You know, you're going to be overbalanced forwards, and you don't want to be sat too upright. Otherwise, you may as well put, you know, some groceries on the front and it just be a shopping bike. So we want to keep it so that we're in the same position, whether on the road bike, gravel bike, or mountain bike, as far as the angles are concerned. And then it is just just how much of the bar width that you work with, and how aggressive you want to have that set up.
Another question: how long should you try a new saddle before throwing in the towel?
$1 million question. How long? If you go out for your first ride and there's a question in your mind about it, change. Don't wait. But you've got to have explored, have I got the right chamois, have I got the right liner, etc. beforehand, before you can then say it's the saddle's fault. Because if you're wearing a male chamois, for example, you're going to have so much more padding down there in the wrong places and the wrong width. It's going to be causing you problems. So you may not notice the issue is actually the saddle or is actually the liner.
And something else to note, a lot of these saddle manufacturers will have almost like your mattress guarantee. They'll have like 90-day ride guarantees. So make sure you look for that if you're exploring. It's maybe even worth going to a bike shop and buying a few different kinds of saddles, trying them out, and then returning them. And then you can buy the one that you really want later.
I've actually had that, Casey, with one of my riders. Her parents bought hundreds of pounds worth of saddles to try, and within 30 days, all but one had been sent back.
And one more question from the chat, and then we'll open it up to anybody who's been waiting to ask. Could you please reiterate proper pedal placement on the bottom of the foot? So where the cleat placement should be on the bottom of the shoe.
Yep, so between the 5th and 1st metatarsal head, basically on the widest and flattest part of the foot. Yes. Couple of, well, one caveat: if you've got extra long big toes, then that may need to be slightly further forward than you would normally, just because the toe is extra long and the shoe length is obviously going to be that little bit bigger.
Okay, does anybody else have questions that they want to ask over video? Once, going twice. I'm not going to auctioneer because that's going to be terrible.
I'm going to, as I said at the beginning, I'm going to grab Annabelle, if you don't mind, Annabelle, and just ask you about the virtual bike fit that we did the other month.
I found it pretty useful because I've changed my position for riding and training now, and I'll most likely be racing that bike next season. So I know I've got the position I need for my racing now, which is good.
And how easy did you find making the adjustments?
Well, for my changes, I just needed to change stem. So I find it very easy, as I'm used to it anyway, just to undo and swap over. And
how much experience do you think everyone would need to be able to change the stem over, or to, you know, tighten and replace something?
I don't think you need that much experience, and I'm sure like GCN will do plenty of videos on simple mechanic skills, and they're easy to follow as well.
Fabulous. Thanks, Annabelle. Sorry to jump in on you on that.
We have one more question came in to the chat regarding tingling and numbness in the toes. Would you say it's most likely stemming too much from the anterior pelvic tilt, or is there another reason? And that also made me think about with the ballet toes and the women who ball their feet as well.
Yeah, really good point there, Casey. And I didn't talk about the ballet toes before. So over tightening of the shoes, not having the correct support. So if you've not got your lateral arch supported through the shoe, and so what happens, imagine that's your foot, this is your lateral arch. As you pedal, it flattens, it comes up, it flattens. If you support it, you've got more control over it, and you're not then splaying out the foot in the shoe as much as the pedal stroke. The ballet toes it's not exclusive to women, but we certainly see it more in women. And that's where the pedal stroke is in that kind of motion. It's generally formed from having a bike that's potentially the wrong size for you. And then as the saddle height's wrong, you can only pedal in that motion. So you lose the ability to be able to scrape through the bottom of the pedal stroke and engage the calf, the hamstring, and then the glute through that power drive. The pins and needles, or the numbness in the toes, will be a combination of that, but it's a lack of blood flow. And if you're pointing down and always pointing down, you're not allowing the blood to circulate naturally through the foot.
any other questions? I put in the chat box James' address, and I put in my email address. Please feel free to reach out to us. If there's anything you're really shy or embarrassed to ask, we have heard it all, so please feel free to reach out and ask us those questions as well. I'll let James tell you about how you can get set up with doing a virtual bike fit. He can do that here in the US, he could do that over in the UK, and he's going to be having a special offer for those of you. So it's a get an amazing bike fit from one of the best that's out there for a really great price.
Fabulous. Thanks, Casey. So yeah, we can do it literally as I showed everyone before on the video. We can do it via the, sorry, see you later, have a great track session. They're off to the velodrome now to go training. We can do it literally from either a video, well, I would like a video call. We normally use Zoom along with some photographs in advance, so I can start working on the angles and positions. Zoom obviously is, international. We can do it very easily. And then from that, as long as you're comfortable taking some things apart and adjusting it, that's perfect. Obviously, I don't have a selection of stems that I can post across the pond to you to try and then post them all back. That would be a bit daft. But we can certainly work on getting that hand position in the correct placement, saddle height, and we will look at the front of the cleat setup. Whilst we won't actually go through the full cleat setup on a virtual fit, we'll look at whether or not you need to toe in, heel in, whichever one. We'll be looking at that alignment. I'll be able to see. I might ask you to draw on your legs with a little cross so I can see things moving a little bit easier. But yeah, we can take it through there. And we'll be doing that with a 25% reduction on our normal costs for anybody on this call. So we'll be taking out the footbed from the cost of the bike fit to start with, because again, I'm sure you can buy the footbed over in the US cheaper than I can post it over to you. So we'll be doing that instead of £135, we'll be doing it for £75. So that's the footbed is the reduction, and then the 25% reduction.
Awesome, and you're going to be getting a recording, a link to the recording in an email after this. We'll make sure that we post the links we were talking about, some of the links that I shared over in the chat. I also, over here in Colorado, I do virtual coaching, so you can be anywhere and I can guide you through some coaching as well. We have, as far as what I offer, I'm just opening up a metabolic lab, so we'll be able to offer those starting January 1st is our estimate. We do one-on-one nutrition coaching and can get you a very specialized diet or meal plan written out by registered dietitians. Again, all of your coaching, anything that you need, we can also take care of that over here for you. I do free consultations, so just send me an email. We can get you set up. If you need resources where you are, we both, James and I both have an expansive network we can reach out to get you in touch with some professionals that are going to really care about you, put you first, because that's important. We want you to feel empowered and enjoy your bike. So with that, if there are no other questions, James, if you don't have anything else to add,
Just thank you to everybody.
All right, go out, ride safe, stay safe, have a great holiday season, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. See you soon.
You can leave meeting or something.
Hang out here until everyone's off. Make sure there's no lingering questions.
Yeah, just in case there's that question that you didn't want to ask in public, but
I think these may have been ones that were away from their phone for a second.
Yeah.
James, thank you so much. Reach out to you again with all this other information, and I'll get it sent out. I'll just grab that bike geometry link from you, and
Yeah.
we'll send it out. But I just am seeing tons of thank yous over here, and I think that was really helpful for everybody. So thanks again.
No, really enjoyed doing it, Casey. Great to connect and get this going, and I'm sure there'll be something we can do in the future to work with each other.
Absolutely. Looks like there's a couple people moving around.
Fab.
Brittany, can
Right.
you have a lingering question? What about you, Charlotte?
Or Dustin.
Dustin, I saw you just dropped a message in the chat. And then Linda, anything? Okay. Dustin, as far as people who are diabetic, yes, that is something that I've worked with. Depending on what you are looking for, I don't specialize in diabetic management, but that's something I have a team of registered dietitians who can help come up with specialized meal plans. We account for allergies, we account for preferences to make sure that all of that's getting taken care of. We also look at diabetes as a more whole person approach. We try to treat the root causes and not just the symptoms. We work with a lot of integrative and functional practitioners with that. So feel free to send me over an email, and depending on where you are and what those needs are, I can either help you out or get you set up with somebody who can. I'm reading that real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, the breast weight is something I'm very open with my journey. So I was born and went through adolescence, and I did not develop my breast, so I had a breast augmentation surgery. And with that, I went from no breasts to having them, and it did affect my writing quite a bit. It affects the way that I have my posture. It affects how I breathe, so I have to be a little bit more cognizant about that. Depending on other factors, our body fat builds up in different ways, and of course, mammary fat is going to be different than your regular adipose fat that you get just in general. So with that, it's going to be specific to the female with how we go about overcoming those issues. A lot of times, the larger a woman is, the general body fat she has, the larger her breasts are, and so they will reduce as she loses body weight. But it's something we definitely do need to consider with that weight, especially we have this idea sometimes women get a little nervous about having, we say butt out, breast out. So they'll kind of roll over and almost to hunch to hide their breasts some. So we may have some mental aspects we need to consider. I do have a sports psychologist on staff that can go through if there are any issues there. We can do corrective exercises to bring the posture in better alignment. And then also some breathing exercises to retrain your body how to properly breathe in those kinds of situations, because we start to shallow breathe over time, and we need to retrain the body on what a good breath is like.
Can I just add to that from a bike position point of view? If you're, so depending on the breast size, can be a contributing factor when fitting a bike, especially when we're looking at riding on the drops or riding in a TT position. I think the best advice I can give, I'm a chap, I don't have breasts, but is to have them support them very well with the best fitting sports bra that you can find for the shape of your body. Okay, so if you're If you're particularly tall, you need to make sure that the sports bra has got a good length to it, so it's not sitting too high. And again, if you're not particularly tall in stature, that it's not too long for you, so it's not sitting halfway down your body. Make sure you look after all. I've talked about lots of parts of the body today. We didn't mention the breast, but support everything and wear the best clothing you can at all turns.
Yeah, sometimes for women with larger breasts, front and zip bras are a lot better.
Yeah.
You don't put a lot of pressure on clasps in the back because the breasts are pulling the weight forward. It also helps to give a lot more compression. And when you're doing very high levels of activity where there's bouncing, then obviously you want to make sure you have those suckers strapped down a little bit more. So those would be some of my additional tips.
From a pedaling efficiency point of view, if you pedal smoothly, you scrape through the bottom of the pedal stroke. As you come through the bottom of the pedal stroke, by pulling through the bottom as you push over the top, it will neutralize the amount of bounce from the body. So you're pulling down onto the saddle as well as pushing up at the same time. If you just push down, you're more likely to bounce. And that's the whole body. But if you do have issues, try and focus on your pedaling stroke as well.
Okay, anything else from Brittany, Charlotte, Dustin, or Olivia? Okay, so with that, we're gonna go ahead and log off here. James, enjoy your evening, and I'm gonna go
Will do.
enjoy the rest of the day here.
Excellent. Brilliant. Thanks everyone. Bye for now.